No.
We only had you one. Well, we have you 2 times tomorrow.
You
and
do.
I'm mad.
Why?
Because my debate is tomorrow, and I want to practice so I can decide on before I end up do it.
All right. So this is
today.
No, mine's tomorrow.
Yeah, but we have Eisenhower today.
Yeah, I know, but I need her tomorrow too, so I can practice.
all right. So we are moving on
Okay.
to our last set of notes. This is still kind of part of the same unit. So in the last part of our unit, we talked about kind of the science of predators and prey and ecosystems and how materials move and all those sorts of things.
If one thing died, it would affect other stuff.
Correct. And so this last part of our unit, we're going to be talking about humans and how humans are impacting the environment and the Earth's ecosystems. Good. So we'll probably start some notes today. Maybe we'll go back. We still got to finish what we were working on yesterday with the nutrient cycles, and then maybe finish the notes. And we're going to watch a documentary in this about climate change. So that's kind of our plan. And then we have a couple labs to do, a gizmo lab, and then one more state lab, which will take us to the end of the semester. So you guys, I'm sure, have heard about plenty of different ways humans are affecting the Earth.
Like the factories.
We talked about some of them yesterday, right? Extinction, pollution, things like that. So why do humans have such a large impact on the Earth compared to other species? Like other species, polar bear or wolves or trees, they don't have a giant negative impact on the Earth. What's different about humans? Okay.
Also production of CO2 emissions.
Okay. Yeah. So we do certain things. We have certain activities that no other species does, like burning fossil fuels, which releases CO2. What else were you going to say, Isaiah?
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay.
But because they have a whole bunch of factories, it's getting into the air a lot quicker than different, like animals. Animals don't kill as quick as humans are killing them.
Okay.
And there's some areas where the sewage doesn't go anywhere, so then it's going out into other places and can contaminate water or harm the animals.
Yeah. Okay.
Deforestation.
Okay. So yeah, all of these things, you're right. All of the things you guys have been mentioning, those are reasons. And one important thing to think, like what makes humans different from other species is that we alter our environment, right? More than any other species. We build homes. We air condition them to change the climate. We have heat. We build cities. We create huge farms. No other species modifies the environment like we do. So that's one factor. And another factor is that we have very rapid population growth over the last couple hundred years. There's more humans on the Earth, and that number grew very, very quickly. And so the more people you have on Earth, how does that affect the Earth?
Because you need more houses, so that means you're cutting down trees where animals are living, so then they have nowhere to live. And then there's going to be more waste because if people don't know how to dispose of their trash properly, it's going everywhere else, and then the factories have to make more stuff, so then more plastic is going into the atmosphere.
Yeah, the more humans we have, the more resources we need, like fuel and energy and homes and lumber and food and water. And so those resources that we use, they come from the Earth. And so when our population grows very quickly, we're sort of, if you remember when we talked about carrying capacity, like what's the number of animals that can be supported in a certain area? Well, if we think about humans and the Earth, there's only a certain number of people that the Earth can support sustainably. And if we go beyond that point and we require more resources than the Earth has, then it's going to be difficult.
The amount of animals is also numbered with the amount of humans. If there's a lot in that one area, they won't have enough.
Yeah, that humans can encroach on habitat. They can remove habitat of species.
And maybe they want to know, but they're still harming that
Mhm.
species because they're still doing it.
Yeah. This is a graph of the human population over the last, 10,000 years. So what do you notice when you look at this graph? How do you interpret this?
Skyrocketed
When?
right after the bubonic plague in the early 2000s.
Yeah, so the human population on Earth is estimated to be, 100 million or so, less than that, 50 million, for thousands of years. It was growing, right, slowly.
But then it picked up.
But then look at when we get here. This is probably about, 1700. What happened to the graph?
It spiked.
It just went straight up. Why, how come? What caused it? Why? Like if the population continued, you'd only expect us to have maybe 700 million people.
Babies.
We actually have 6 or 7 billion people. Well, yeah, but why? But what else?
Is it the Industrial Revolution?
Sort of ish. What changed? Maybe in the 17 and 1800s.
They had more cures for illnesses, and there wasn't like as many wars going on. So
Your first thing was correct. That's probably the biggest reason.
but the wars were
Somewhat, but there's still wars today.
but not as bad.
I would say medicine is the big thing. What happened with medicine? What were the big, huge things that allowed people to live longer, less infants to die, and just overall increase the lifespan of people?
Well, they were
There's a couple, like 2 or 3 major things.
scientists.
Yeah, but I'm like, what specific medication or
Antibiotics.
So one is antibiotics, right?
Vaccine.
Before there were antibiotics, basically, if you got an infection, let's say an ear infection or a throat infection or an infection on your skin, it either you just had to sort of let it heal, or maybe it spread and people died, right? Millions of people used to die from infections with bacteria that today are just like routine. And we would just take an antibiotic and it would help cure. So the discovery of antibiotics is one big thing. Something else we probably have been talking a lot about recently. Vaccines, right? Vaccines have eliminated many diseases, polio, smallpox, that used to affect millions and millions of people. Nobody gets those diseases anymore for the most part, right? So vaccines prevented people from getting illness, allowing people to live longer, have more children. Sanitation, what we do with our waste, clean water being delivered into our houses. All of those things allowed the human population to grow very, very quickly. And as we just said in the last slide, more people means we need more things from the earth, means we use more fossil fuels, means we take up more space.
And use more water.
Yeah. So the things that we use from the earth, we call them resources or natural resources. And we often kind of split them in 2 categories, renewable resources and non-renewable. Have you heard those terms before?
Yeah.
Okay. Renewable resources are things that don't get used up over time, things that can be replaced. Things like the wind, or using wind. Like, have you ever seen a wind turbine that generates electricity? Yeah, it's on the next slide.
Yeah, it's like what are they called?
Different
thing.
Windmill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do these? Do you know what these do?
They obviously for the wind.
Yeah, but what are they?
On kind of high mountains.
They are. They're up on ridges.
The wind.
But what they're doing is
circulating.
Inside is a coil, and that as it spins, it's creating friction and electricity, therefore sending it down.
Yeah, that makes electricity. That's what a wind turbine does. The spinning of the blades makes electricity, but it's using wind to do that. Are you using up the wind when you put those up?
No.
Is it going to be windy tomorrow? Sure. So the wind, wind is renewable. It's going to be there tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So that's a way to get electricity that's renewable, that you're not using. And they also, do these produce any pollution? No, they're just spinning. That's different from like burning coal to produce electricity, which does release pollutants and is not renewable. So wind is a renewable resource, meaning it's not used up. Hydropower. If you ever have seen a dam, it uses the same principle. As water flows through the dam, it spins a turbine, which makes electricity.
That doesn't harm. It's just using water.
Yeah, so the water's not getting used up. Now, there are effects of dams. They can affect the ecosystem, but it's not releasing any pollution, right? Just the water turns the turbine. What is
Solar panels.
solar panels, right? If you put solar panels on a house, they take energy from the sun, make electricity for the house. But are you using up the sun?
No.
Does it mean because we put up solar panels, it's not going to be sunny tomorrow? No. It's renewable, right? And again, these solar panels, they just make electricity directly. They're not putting carbon dioxide in the air and so forth.
Yeah, and if that was the case, there's fields and fields of solar panels.
Yeah.
In, Rome.
Oh yeah, they're becoming more and more common because over the last 10 years or so, the cost and efficiency of solar panels has increased. I mean, the cost has decreased very quickly and the efficiency has increased. So they're becoming more and more common because they're cheaper and they work better.
Maybe we'll stop harming them.
Maybe. And then this is using geothermal power. This is energy from in the earth. If you drill down in the earth, it's warmer because you're getting closer to the core of the earth. And you could use that heat energy to provide heat for buildings and so forth. It's renewable. Non-renewable resources,
Like the environment.
there are things that get used up. Like if you burn some coal, it's gone, right? And you have to go in the ground and dig out more. And eventually, it's going to run out. And burning these non-renewable fossil fuels releases pollutants, releases carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So it also harms the environment in that way. So fossil fuels are examples of non-renewables, right? Things we take out of the earth. They were formed hundreds of millions of years ago, and they're not going to be replenished, right? If you take oil out of the ground, it's not going to form again in any meaningful time. Natural gas is a fossil fuel, coal, oil. And this is where we've been getting most of our energy for the last 200 years.
Isn't that from in the ground?
Yep, all of these are from in the ground. So, for example, the Industrial Revolution started with this, right? Coal. Mining coal out of the ground, and you can burn coal, and it releases a huge amount of heat. And you could use that heat to make electricity or power a factory and so forth. And natural gas and oil that we use, oil includes what we put in cars, gasoline, jet fuel, kerosene, diesel fuel, all our oil products. So that's where we've been getting most of our energy. But the problem, as we said, there's a limited amount of these, and they release large amounts of pollution when they're used. So if we can shift what we use from these things to these things, then we can hopefully reduce our impacts on the Earth's environment. So we're going to talk about some of these environmental issues in this topic, some specific issues. Okay. And we kind of have mentioned some of these before, and we've been talking about them here and there. And we talked about this the other day, species extinction. There's over 1 million species on Earth right now that are facing extinction, that could potentially become extinct. And yesterday we talked about the causes. Why are they becoming extinct? Well, sometimes it's actual people killing these animals, hunting them. Passenger pigeons were a type of pigeon that there were so many passenger pigeons in the United States that sometimes they were so dense it looked like it was nighttime because they blocked out the sun. But they were hunted in the 1800s to extinction. Every last one of them was killed. Elephants are in danger of becoming extinct. Why do people hunt elephants?
Their tusks cost, but you can sell them and they're alive.
Yes, for ivory that comes from the elephant tusk.
I know the orca is
Yeah.
among.
Yeah, there's all different. There's many species that are in danger of being extinct. But not. It's not only the organisms are only in danger because of we're actually killing them. They also can become endangered because we use pesticides, which are chemicals we use in agriculture that can get into the environment and they can kill organisms. As we expand where we live and where we farm, we reduce the habitat of species. Like in China, the habitat of the giant panda is being reduced so that there's only 200 giant pandas left because of deforestation, because humans have encroached on their habitat. We talked the other day about the rainforest is one of the most diverse ecosystems with many, many species. But the rainforest is another ecosystem that humans are destroying at a very fast rate.
Forests in general, because that's basically where they're getting the wood for the houses and stuff.
Yeah. And also for farming. Like lots of times, like the tropical rainforest is cut down, burned, and then they use it to grow crops or to graze cattle and stuff like that. And so that's another big reason. Also, as we change the Earth's climate, some organisms can't adapt to that and may become extinct. Isaiah, you mentioned polar bears the other day.
Penguin.
Yeah, that's another example. They live in pretty narrow conditions, and if the Earth warms too much, they're not going to be able to survive under those conditions. So, how do we help with this problem? Well, we can protect habitats. Sometimes that's done. Like in Africa, they've established large wildlife refuges where they don't allow any hunting or any development. Now, sometimes people break the rules and poach. It's called poaching, is breaking the rules to kill animals. But that's one way. Protecting areas of the rainforest. Using less pesticides. We have laws that in the United States called the Endangered Species Act that say you can't develop or you can't do anything that could potentially harm an endangered species. What is this?
Bald eagle.
They were almost extinct. Do you know why?
Because people were, no.
Not because of hunting.
Probably not enough food.
No.
No.
They were almost extinct because of a chemical called DDT. DDT was a pesticide that was very commonly used. What people didn't realize at the time is when it got into the food web and it made its way through, bald eagle or birds of prey, it affected them by making the shell of their eggs very, very thin. And they were so thin that the eggs never hatched. And so the population of bald eagles and other raptors like that decreased drastically. So what we did is we stopped using DDT. We banned the use of DDT in like the 1960s. And actually bald eagle populations have recovered. And they're much more common now. Like you can see bald eagles around here in many places.
I've seen a couple near my house.
Oh, really? Yeah, there you can see them once in a while. And it's a good example of how humans, if they take action, can improve on some of these problems.
Well, no, I think they should do. I think for some of the species that are on the verge of extinction, they should ban hunting that specific.
Yeah, they do that.
Or
and like
they should because it's harmful, so they should probably start buying different stuff for the factories that will still allow it to run, but not as so it wouldn't be as harmful.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they use the what is it? I forgot what it was called. Like all the stuff on the other page.
Mm-hmm.
If they use some of that, it would help a lot.
Yeah. There's lots of ways you can try that we can make laws or change how we're doing certain things that can help prevent some of these or help improve some of these. Here are some examples of endangered species. Right, these are big species, right? We're aware of, like, you probably have heard of endangered tigers and pandas and gorillas, things like that, because like they're big and like they're kind of cute but there's lots of species that you don't know and I don't know, like little amphibians and worms and tiny reptiles that are also endangered. But lots of times we just sort of think of these big things that we can sort of picture and envision. So all of these species are endangered. Elephants, Asian elephants and African elephants, giant pandas. This is the blue whale, one of the largest whales on Earth. The gorilla, the red wolf, tigers.
It's snowing out.
Yeah. Another problem that humans have caused is this issue of invasive species. Do you have any idea what that means?
What's it?
An invasive species?
Like invasion.
Yeah, it has to do with, that's where the word comes from, Cade. An invasive species is when humans bring a species from one part of the world to another part of the world where they didn't
Pandas.
evolve. Well, pandas not so much because there's not a lot of them. An example is rats. The rats that we have in the United States, they came from Northern Europe, Norway. That's where they evolved. That's where they're native. But as people immigrated from Europe to North America, some rats from Norway, these Norway rats, hitched a ride on the boats. And then when they got off the boats, they established populations here in the United States. And now where do you find rats in the United States? Everywhere. And there's lots of examples of these. Have you ever heard of a zebra mussel? A mussel is like a little, like, sort of clam.
Oh, yeah.
And zebra mussels are these really small ones. And they came from Asia. And what happened is they got also into ships that were going across the oceans, and they established a population in the United States, and they've spread all through the Northeast. Like in some areas, do I have a picture? Yeah. These are zebra mussels, these tiny ones. And they have just expanded rapidly because when a species gets taken from one place to another, often they don't have any predators, right? Because zebra mussels didn't evolve here, they're brand new. No animals in our area have evolved to eat them. So basically, their population can grow unchecked by any predator. And then they could start to outcompete the native species that we have here.
Like regular clam.
Yeah, like the clam that you saw those on. So often, if a species is taken from one place and introduced in a new place, it can disrupt the entire ecosystem. See this picture down here? Kudzu, we don't see it around here. It's in the south more. But it's an invasive plant. It also came from Asia. And it grows so thick. Like this is in one season. This plant that covered up this little cabin is kudzu. It's a very fast growing plant and it just spreads all over and completely engulfed everything. Again, nothing eats it. So it can just grow out of control here because it has no natural predator.
It's here, right?
What's that?
Is any of it here?
In like where we live? No, it doesn't survive in like colder climates. It's like if you go down south to like South Carolina, Georgia.
But not Florida because it gets.
I think it is in Florida. It grows on like power lines and these big long mats.
Oh, like it kind of looks like.
It looks like a moss, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Rabbits. Somebody thought it would be a good idea to bring some rabbits to Australia to hunt. In 1859, 24 rabbits were brought to Australia and released. Today, there's billions of rabbits in Australia. It's a problem. There's so many, it's a problem. They expanded so quickly because, again, there's no natural predators because they were introduced there. One way, sometimes what happens is one way to try to control these invasive species is to bring in a predator.
Coyotes.
Could be. But sometimes when people try to do that, the coyotes become a problem and it doesn't actually solve the situation. So that is sometimes done. That's called biocontrol. If you take one organism and try to bring it in and use it to control another, that's called biocontrol. Here's more examples of invasive species. I already told you about the zebra mussels. This plant, purple loosestrife, grows around here in wet, marshy areas. Has
Did that cause something else?
I don't know, it has purple flowers. This is a marsh wetland plant. And what happened is it was brought to the United States as an ornamental, like people would plant it in their garden because it looks nice. But it escaped. And it spread so much that it outcompetes cat. Do you know what cattails are? Native cattails. They have like a little, it looks like a hot dog at the end.
Oh yeah.
That's what's supposed to live around here in wet areas. But this purple loosestrife has outcompeted those, and that's become a problem in wetland ecosystems. Gypsy moths, lots of insect diseases can be transferred from one place to another. Like if you ever gone camping, you may know you're not supposed to bring firewood from one place to another place because in that firewood there could be insects and other pests that you could be bringing into the campgrounds. Dutch elm disease killed the streets of the United States. If you see like, I don't know if you've seen this or if you've seen a movie or a picture like the ideal like suburban street, you have like trees on each side and they come up and it forms like almost a tunnel over the street. A lot of streets used to look like that. And those are because they planted these elm trees and they grew up and have that shape. But a disease, a fungus called Dutch elm disease came in the 1930s and basically wiped out almost all of those elm trees.
No more.
There are some here and there, but they're not like they used to be. They used to be all over, and this disease wiped them out.
Is there a way you can get that and like plant more?
Yeah, good question, Isaiah. Some scientists like work on breeding like a type of elm that's resistant to that disease to like kind of bring them back. So yeah, people are researching that and working on it. Rats, pigeons are not native. Starlings, the little black birds we see all over the place, those are all examples of these invasive species.
Squirrels were here.
Squirrels are here. Squirrels are native, yeah. All right, let's move on. Water pollution. So water pollution is when, basically any pollution is when humans are adding a harmful substance to the ecosystem. Now, what are the things humans might add? Sewage, garbage, sewage, you know, the stuff that goes down our drains and toilets.
Isn't there a place, I forgot what it was called. There's no real street, you know? I forgot where it was.
Like Venice? And like, are you talking about like canals?
Yeah.
Instead of streets?
Yeah.
And
there was like, maybe it was like before there was a lot of sewage in there.
Yeah, so that's maybe you're thinking of Venice in Italy. I've been there before, and they have some streets, but they also have some canals. So like they have tons. There's tons of bridges, and
But
Venice.
The streets are very like.
Yeah, they're narrow. They're cobblestone. There's no cars in Venice. Like you either walk or you could take like taxis in the water. These boats that bring you from place to place. Really, and so that the Venice like lagoon it's pretty polluted, I would say. But there's a bigger problem in Venice, bigger than pollution. You know what it is? It's sea level rise. Because as climate change happens and sea levels are rising, what's it do to that city that has all these canals? Well, if the water rises, it floods the city. And Venice floods very frequently, much more frequently now than it has in the past. So going back to pollution, you know, sewage from our homes and from businesses can pollute water. Toxic substances used in manufacturing if they get into the water, can harm it. Fertilizers and pesticides from farms and agriculture, all of those things, when they get into the water, can affect the ecosystem. If they're harmful, they can affect the plants and the animals living there, and again, disrupt the food web.
Is the stuff you use to kill weeds, is that harmful
Yes.
to other plants?
Yep.
So then the animals eat that, and then
Yeah, that's
animals eat the other animals, and then that's probably the start of that.
Yeah, that's exactly this. That's so if you take that, like, you might be talking about just spraying some of that on your sidewalk to kill the grass or whatever. But if you imagine like a golf course or a farm that uses a lot of those types of pesticides, and then it rains afterwards, lots of that can end up in streams and rivers and lakes and so
and
forth.
the ponds, because there's a lot of ponds that go.
Yeah, and so that can cause problems. It can cause ecosystem, it can cause organisms to die from these toxic substances. If we add fertilizer to a body of water, what happens is algae blooms form, right? We're adding all these nutrients so algae can form, and then that can reduce the amount of oxygen as that algae dies and decomposes. Heat, even if we add too much heat to the like nuclear power plants and other plants sometimes take in water to cool their equipment and release it back. And that heat can actually harm organisms because warm water holds less oxygen than cold water. So how do we help with this problem? Well, we manage our waste, right? We store harmful products rather than just releasing them into the water. We treat the wastewater, that sewage, before it's released. And we try to reduce how much of these chemicals we're actually using. This is our last slide, BioControl. So I mentioned this earlier. You still. There you go. So I mentioned BioControl earlier. So if you have, let's say you have a garden. Anyone have a garden?
My aunt
Yeah?
does.
What do you grow, Cade?
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes? Cade, or Isaiah, what does your aunt grow?
Well, I help, so we
What kind of vegetables or plants?
tomatoes,
Okay.
cucumbers.
Let's use tomatoes as an example. So at your aunt's house, Kate, at your house, you have a garden growing tomatoes. Well, you might have, you start to notice like holes in all of the leaves of your tomatoes.
That's
Something's going on, right? It could be these tiny little aphid insects that eat the leaves.
oh, they're not around my aunt's house because she has those, and they just
Okay.
She puts a thing in there that attracts them there, and then when they go in, they can't get back out.
So those aphids in here, you could spray your tomato plants
But then that's
with a pesticide, right? It's a chemical that's going to kill those aphids that are eating the leaves. That's one thing you can do. But that gets back to what we were just talking about. Those pesticides can be harmful. They can get into the ecosystem. It's not great to eat them either, right? So an alternative way of managing things like that is this concept of biocontrol. It's an alternative to pesticides. It's using something besides a chemical to help get rid of this insect problem. So, yeah, you've seen these things before?
Mm-hmm.
What are these to get rid of? Do you know what kind of a pest
I
they?
thought it was that.
No, they look kind of like that.
They're ugly.
They're called
Squirrels.
called Japanese beetles. They got like a rainbow. They're pretty big. They can destroy the leaves of a large area very quickly. And so these bags actually they have a chemical that attracts the Japanese beetles to them, and the beetles fall in and they go in this bag and it fills up with the Japanese beetles. So you're not spraying a pesticide to get rid of them. You're actually attracting them and trapping them in this container. So it's an alternative to pesticides. This is so this plant is purple loosestrife, that purple plant that we said is invasive and outcompetes cattails. This is a little coleoptera beetle that preys on it. And so I used to do this activity like 15 years ago. We would raise these beetles in class and take them to the Utica Marsh and release them to help control the loosestrife population. So again, that's using one species to control another without using any chemicals. So those are ways that we could try to control pests without using some of these chemicals.
My aunt, she has like a whole bunch of those like spread out in her garden, so she would have. Here's her garden. She would have one here,
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of these beetles. Like these bags, they fill up with like
they're like
thousands of these beetles. They're really gross.
it's like the
Yeah.
bag. It looks like that at the start of whenever she puts it out, and then it's like this limit,
Yeah.
and then like